Excellent technologically. He puts all kinds of
We've
stuff
got
up.
a special Saturday morning show for everybody, and I am delighted to welcome America's toughest sheriff and America's toughest lawyer, Sheriff Joe Arpaio and Larry Klayman. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, my good friend. It's our pleasure.
Pleasure to see you both. Now, Larry, you and Sheriff Joe have launched a new initiative to really help support America's law enforcement at this unprecedented time. I'm talking, of course, about this effort, americassheriff.org. Can you tell us a little bit about the new webpage and what it is that you and the sheriff are going to be doing?
Well, it's more than a web page. It's a group. It's a nonprofit. We set it up recently. Sheriff Joe and I are partners in effect. We're running it. And it's to be a hamburger helper to law enforcement. In other words, no one is standing up for our local police or other law enforcement. Even our Justice Department does little to nothing. We've got these DAs elected with Soros money, for instance, in Philadelphia, who are persecuting police officers based upon their private social media accounts, firing them. And people are being, that is the police officers themselves, being attacked in the streets, maimed, and killed. So we, the American people, need to rise up. And who better than Sheriff Joe Arpaio, America's toughest sheriff, to head this group? And he's forming a role here in terms of educating the American people. And we're going to be taking hard action in the courts and elsewhere to protect our law enforcement, because no one else, frankly, is doing it. I turn it over to the sheriff because he's the expert on these things.
Sheriff Joe?
Well, this is thank you, Larry, for getting involved. We need more people like you. A lot of people don't have the guts to speak out. And sometimes when they speak out, all they do is talk. Our program is action, not just talk. Although talk is important, get the word out, publicity, let people know what we're doing. So I want to thank you too, Jason, for that. But I spent 55 years in law enforcement, over 55 years all over the world with the feds. I was a cop in D.C., walked the black beat for 4 years, and then became a federal. I went to Vegas, locked up Elvis. That's my name to fame.
Wow.
That police. Actually, I grabbed him 100 miles an hour, took him down a police station. I gave him a pass. But that's another story. So something has to be done. There's a war on cops. I've been talking about that for the last 2-3 years, raising money to help the police that are thrown, as I say, under the bus for political reasons. That's sad what's going on. You know, these mayors and governors and police chiefs, the minute some heat comes down, their first call is to the Civil Rights Division. Actually, the first call is probably to the media so they can cover their butt, because they don't like a video going viral, and then they all start shaking because they don't have the guts to face the music. I'm talking about the politician. So who suffers? The cops. They don't even give them a chance to go through the system, through the investigative process. They hang them before they even have a chance to go home at night. So that's bad, really bad. So Larry and I were going to crack down, and Larry has the courage to sue people. Now, I lost the election. I'm not going to get into that. To a Democrat who got $3 million from Soros. And by the way, I hear there's some problems at the Justice Department. I'm not going to criticize the Attorney General, because from day one, Donald Trump has been my hero. It took me 80 years to find one. So I'm with him to the bitter end. But it's tough running a bureaucracy, running a country. And so I'm a little concerned. And I'm not going to badmouth the Attorney General, but I don't like the idea that they don't investigate when voting or the political decision is about to be made. Why did they go after me, Obama and Holder, the day before voting started? Day before voting started, that are going to put me in jail on a Mickey Mouse contempt of court. So I needed help. Larry helped me, and a lot of cops are going to need help. What I like about Larry, he's not afraid to sue. So I'm hoping I talk to Larry. I'm sure he'll do it at the appropriate time. One way to get back at these political figures is to sue them. They don't like to be sued. Nobody likes to be sued. So that's one mission. And the other mission is try to help the cops, their families, and defend the cops from the beginning. And so that's our mission. And I'm looking forward to that. Larry and I are a good team, and it's for the good of our country. A lot of patriots out there. Larry is one of them. So someone has to speak back. Someone has to fight, because we got a big problem in our country. As I said, I'm for President Trump. Day one, July 2015, I was the only one that introduced him. Everybody shied away. And after all my elections, I think I've been through 16. This is one that I'm very disgusted at for some reason, maybe because I'm getting old. And by the way, I'm going to tell you my age. I'm proud of it. Of course, that's one reason I lost. I'm 88, going on 89. So I want the whole world to know that. I'm out there working 14 hours a day. You're talking to me, Jason. I think you understand what I'm talking about. Not at 88, but when you're 88, you're getting up there. And you're looking at me. And you're probably saying, gee, this guy, he's 88. He's lying. When was he born? Well, I have a birth certificate can prove it, okay? I'll show you my birth certificate if you don't believe it. I'll show anybody my birth certificate. Now, I'm not going to say that for someone else. I'm sure there's a former president that doesn't have one, but that's another issue. And that's big in my book. It's coming up. All the facts are there. So thank you, Larry, for the guts, the courage. And we need more people like you. And one thing about Larry, he has to make a living, but he's doing it not just for money. He's doing it for what's good for our country. There's a big difference there. A lot of people support the president, but does it come from the heart or the political mind that they support him? Mine comes from the heart. The big difference. So I'm looking forward to this. Larry came up with this idea, and I've been raising money for cops in another situation for 3 years to help the families. Now we're going to join forces. We're going to do something. And this is, if there's any time in our country, we need Larry Klayman and Joe Arpaio. This is it. Believe me, what's going on in the streets and elsewhere.
Well, Jason, it's a mutual admiration society. I've gotten to know the sheriff extremely well over the last many years. He's a patriot. He's unafraid. He supports all people. They've taken shots at him. They take shots at me. This is what they do. They're vicious on the left. And the more they do it, the more we push back. In many ways, we're like the president himself. And what we need right now are for the American people to rise up and to do it for themselves and to support americassheriff.org. And also go and you can get our gear as well. You can even, get T-shirts and you can get badges and things like that, because we need to show that we're proud to be Americans and we're proud of law enforcement. I had a brother who was a police officer. He's still alive. He's much younger than I am. He's now trying to be a lawyer. But I know what it's like to be a cop. I've been a law enforcement officer myself. I was with the Department of Justice. And I was with the Department of Justice when justice actually did something at this point in time. And The sheriff just alluded to something which I think tells you a lot, is that the Justice Department is not just failing to enforce the rule of law with regard to these domestic terrorists on the left, these radical leftists, who were even in the streets of Beverly Hills a few weeks ago wearing T-shirts, "Eat the Rich," like Jeffrey Dahmer, "Kill the Rich." They have been attacking people, they've been harming people, and yet they do nothing. Our government does nothing about that. The president wants to do something about it, but the Justice Department does little to nothing. But just in the last few days, and I don't know the facts, and I'm not supporting anybody here, but I find it curious that the Justice Department arrests so-called militia leaders in Michigan. If I had to guess, they probably didn't do anything overt to try to kidnap the governor. They probably just shot off their mouth because they were upset. And that's what's been happening. But yet they want to make a show that the right wing somehow is the problem here. And they're not. Okay, this is isolated if in fact what occurred claims to occur. But why aren't they locking up people on the left, the radical left, Antifa, radicals of every race, color, creed, religion, and sexual persuasion? It's not something which is localized with one particular group. And the sheriff and I realized that the only line of defense that we have that's, in terms of the government is law enforcement. And these people risk their lives every single day, as the sheriff did and does. And the people around him in Maricopa County. And he speaks the truth. That's why I love the sheriff. He's always spoken the truth. He was unafraid. He told the truth about Obama's birth certificate. He never said Obama was born in Kenya. He said the birth certificate is fraudulent, and you don't have to have an IQ higher than 50 to figure that out. But he did a forensic analysis and proved it, but no one would listen to him. And instead, they branded him and people like me racist because we were questioning simply a fact that needed to be known to the American people. And this is why I love the sheriff, and because of that, we're going to make a dynamic duo here because we're not afraid. We'll do what needs to be done. We're not saying we're at the level of the founding fathers, but we're aspiring to be at that level. And that's what the American people need to be right now. So I hope people will go to americascheriff.org. There's two S's in the middle, americascheriff.org, and donate it. It's tax deductible. It's a nonprofit. And also support the cases that we're going to bring. I already have one case that I filed at Freedom Watch, but we're going to be filing these new cases with regard to law enforcement officers through America's Sheriff. And we hope to have the support of law enforcement everywhere. We hope to travel, get out there and speak, to educate people. The Sheriff's book is a great opportunity. I urge people to buy that book and to buy my book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. He's prominently featured in my book, and I understand that I'm featured in his to some extent. And, we are two people who believe in the same things, and there are many people who do as well out there. I think the majority of Americans do. Whatever your political persuasion, we know that we need law enforcement.
And Sheriff, in 55 years in law enforcement, did you ever imagine that we would see the types of things we've been seeing for the past several months in the streets? I mean, burning police cars, fighting with the police, just brazen criminality. People are afraid to leave their homes, and the news would tell us that this is a concoction of the right wing.
No, I lived through, excuse me, I lived through riots in early, excuse me, not that I'm getting old, I have a little touch of the flu, just the flu, don't worry, you can't catch it. But what I'm concerned about, and I look at the big picture, I'm always looking at the big picture, even though was a local sheriff. Because I was head of the DEA, Federal Drug Enforcement, in Turkey, Syria, Mexico, Central America, South America, Texas, Arizona, with the feds, top guys. And I learned something when I was in foreign country. I worked with Noriega. I can go through all that. And they have TV now in this system. They know what's going on. How do you think they feel when they see cops standing by, buildings being burned down, no one doing anything about it, And we're supposed to be the most powerful country in the world. We can't lock up some looters or people, and cops are just standing there. So I look at the reputation of this country worldwide, not just what's happened domestically. And it's sad, sad. Cops are afraid to go and make an arrest because the mayor, the police chief say you can't do it. No, they would never say that with me because I would have raided all these places. I already proved that on other issues because I'm elected. I'm elected. I don't report to anybody but the people. And for 24 years, I did that. So the poor cops, they're there doing nothing. And if they did something, it'd be under investigation, especially if they got on the video. So these videos control everything too, because the politicians use the videos as an excuse. They think the videos are all accurate, but they could care less. They have to show their people, oh, see, we're doing something right now. We're not going to let these cops get away with it. And the cops, the dangerous part, the cops now, some of them are afraid to do anything. Why would you pull a car over and be proactive, maybe find a dead body in the trunk or drugs, when if you pull somebody over and you say something wrong, or even trying in the heat of passion to protect yourself and the people, they're going to go after you. So why should you take a chance and do that? They're going to just wait for the 911 call or the dispatcher to dispatch them instead of being proactive and stopping people, legally. No. So this is a bigger picture. When you talk about law enforcement and protecting the cops, they have to be backed up. If you want them to stop people and sometimes catch terrorists, you know what happened? They stopped a few terrorists and what happened in New York. That's how you solve cases. You got to be active and you have to have the morale. You have to know you're being backed up by your superiors. That's not happening. Now, I was with President Trump from day one. Day one, I'll tell you one thing. This is no garbage that he loves law enforcement and military. I've been with him. I've introduced him many rallies. He's not doing that to win votes. He's been doing it from day one. Day one. So the cops they better be happy they got Trump out there. So that's the way I feel about it. It's a major problem, international problem. You have a lot of people here that want to destroy this country. And it looks like they're getting away with it because they ought to be prosecuted. Every one of those people that spit in the sidewalk, that's a violation of the law, lock them up. They don't lock anybody up anymore, it looks like, in these riots and all that. Sometimes they lock up the good people trying to defend themselves.
Well, what's happening for sure here on the streets of New York, Sheriff, is that it's becoming obvious, as it is to you and viewers of Crowdsource the Truth, that the police are really not being proactive and not beating up on the police. As you point out, they realize they're at great risk. I mean, even if a suspect takes a weapon from them and fires it, and even if that's on video, I mean, here we have a suspect. The news likes to focus on the fact that this guy was doing nothing, sleeping in his car. But by the way, his car was in an active drive-through and he was sleeping because he was drunk. He starts a fight with the police when they attempt to arrest him, takes a taser, fires it at the police. And the police respond with deadly force, and unfortunately the guy is killed. But the move is to laud him as a hero and villainize the police. So you're right. It's, what officer would want to risk his family, his career, his own freedom to prosecute or arrest anybody when they know, even if they're in the right, they're at tremendous risk? It's a dangerous condition that's been created.
And it's not just that, Jason. Look at I represent 8 Philadelphia policemen who were fired or forced to resign because a group called the Plainview Project, most likely financed by George Soros. It's very nebulous. It's like the Antifa. It's out there. They've done this to policemen around the country. Illegally broke into their private social media accounts.
Whoa.
And even retweets that the police just simply retweeted that other people made were used as a reason to fire them, hundreds of them. Now, who fired them? First of all, there's the U.S. attorney there, the district attorney there, Larry Krasner, elected with huge amounts of money. Millions of dollars of George Soros went to elect him, this socialist, borderline communist in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, my native city, the home of our country, where Independence Hall is, where it all began. And then you had the mayor, Jim Kenney, who was up for re-election, who wanted to pander to certain minority groups there, radical African Americans in particular, not the African American people in general. And then the police chief, Richard Ross, who since has been dismissed for sexual harassment, and they bring in this woman from Portland by the name of Danielle Outlaw to replace him. Can you believe it? Her name is Outlaw from Portland. Okay? She's just there, for show. And they persecute these police and they drive them out without due process. Now, the sheriff can tell you, if a policeman does something wrong, they have to go through a procedure to be disciplined. And usually the first time, it's minor. It's the second offense or third offense that really creates an issue. But these clients of mine didn't do anything wrong. Yet there are hundreds of them that have been fired, all for political purposes. So people are, they're quitting the police department. What do they need the aggravation for when when the government doesn't stand up for them? And Philadelphia is one of the worst examples, but it's happened everywhere. And another of our valiant police officers, who happens to be a member of the board of America's Sheriff.org, Demetri Penny, African-American police officer, got the same treatment with regard to the Plainview Project. And he's the one who brought cases against Black Lives Matter and Farrakhan and Sharpton over the massacre in Dallas, when Farrakhan was actually ordering his disciples to kill cops and whites there. So this is what we're up against, and it's why you need a group like America's Sheriff.org to fight back. And who better but the sheriff, because he is the true American hero. He's the true embodiment in the modern world of our founding fathers, who was unafraid, who's risked everything for what he believes in.
You look amazingly good, even for 78, Sheriff Arpaio. I have to say, I thought you were 81. You look fantastic.
Oh, come on. You need I look like I'm 81. Come on, everybody says 69 or 70.
No, you look like you're in your 60s, but I thought that I had read somewhere that you were 81. I was surprised to hear that you're 88, and I'm so pleased that you're still...
Why should I be ashamed of that?
No, you shouldn't.
See, I tell everybody when I run my age, I'm not afraid. I want the senior citizens to know if I can do it, they can do it. Don't just go around playing golf because you're 70 or 80. I do that for other reasons. Whenever I do something, it's not one reason.
It's not.
Let me tell you what makes me angry, and nobody talks about it. And I think I still know my mind, okay? 100% my mind operates. They're blaming our president for using this for political reasons, the racial issue. Why is he involved? Why does he say this word, that word? Well, what about Obama? Everybody forgot. He started it all. I'm from Massachusetts. I used to be head of the DEA, but I was sheriff at the time here. Remember when the police officer or security guy grabbed a black college professor? Right away, Obama start criticizing the cop. First of all, why is he involved in a local arrest? And it got so bad that he invited both of them to the White House, and he and Biden had beers to show they treated him. Remember that? Well, Obama set that example right off the bat. He set that example of what's going on now. Same thing. So when they go after Trump because he said something about the racial situation, why don't they talk about Obama when he took office? This is when he took office.
Yeah.
When he took office. Nobody talks about it. They got a short memory. So I talk about it. I remember it. And I could write 50 books on what they did to me. Believe me, one chapter I could write 10 books on, especially the one where the federal judge went after me, especially when Holder came from a law firm. Was it Larry Burling, Covington
Covington and Burling, yeah.
Well, guess what? Holder came from that law firm, became attorney general. In 2009, they went after me in their 100-page report, whatever they have. But here we come back to Phoenix. I'm in trial. ACLU has this law firm. And guess what? The federal judge that hanged me, his brother-in-law is a big shot with that law firm. A big shot. He decides how much money to give to his brother-in-law's law firm. Notwithstanding that his wife in a restaurant, 3 chums were there visiting, and they asked her, "Hey, what does your husband do?" "Oh, he's a federal judge, and he hates our sheriff. He's going to do everything in his power to make sure he never gets elected." Yeah, he did. He destroyed me. Now, I know the president pardoned me, and everybody says I say the wrong thing. I'm not supposed to say I'm not guilty. Yeah, I am not guilty. It's the contempt of court. 8 years, Larry knows. 8 years to get me, and all they could get me is on a contempt of court, a Mickey Mouse charge, like a dog bite. 8 years to get me and destroy me with Soros and everything else. That's just one law firm. I'm not going to get into the birth certificate law firm and his tie with Steele, the Russian thing. It's all in my book. And you know what? Larry knows.
Well, let me just say this with regard to age. Okay, I'm 69 myself, so Sheriff and I are the same age.
Don't look.
It's experience, Jason. It's experience. Why do our adversaries in China, Communist Chinese, have elder leaders? Because they know what goes on. You draw from the past, from your experience, to be able to confront the future and the present. And age is a virtue, not a vice. That was Ronald Reagan's, one of his lines at the time. He said, "I wouldn't hold it against Walter Mondale that you're young and inexperienced." And he won. So that's good. And let me tell you about my book now, because Sheriff's in it. He's prominently featured. But one of the things that triggered me to write this book, it takes a scandal industry, it takes a revolution to forget the scandal industry, was the way a federal judge who I always looked up to and liked, Royce Lambert, handled his case. Because after he was slapped on the wrist for a minor alleged offense of profiling, he was found liable for misdemeanor, not for a felony. Yet CNN, the Huffington Post, and Rolling Stone branded him as a convicted felon. And as far as Rolling Stone, they said he had been thrown in prison already.
Wow.
Now, I brought a defamation suit because I thought the sheriff could really set the tide against the leftist media to hold them accountable. And it landed in front of Judge Royce Lambert quite by accident, randomly. And I said, my God, grace of God. This is great. We've got a judge who has the courage. Well, it turns out that Judge Lambert has lost his courage, unfortunately, and threw the case out, said there wasn't actual malice to bring it because the sheriff's a public figure. Well, that's not true because, see, these networks know the sheriff's history intimately. And what is the standard of actual malice? It's publishing something which is false or in reckless disregard for the truth. They knew he was not a convicted felon. They knew he was not thrown in prison. Yet they defamed him to destroy him. And why do they want to destroy the sheriff? Not just because they hate people like the sheriff and me and anybody who'll stand up to them, but this was a way to get to President Trump because the sheriff's a strong supporter of President Trump. And President Trump is a supporter of law and order and legal immigration. So they used him as the whipping boy. And then another federal judge somewhere else made an exact reverse ruling. It said, well, if you call someone a felon and they're really just convicted of a misdemeanor, that is libelous. That is defamation.
Per se, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is, because it harms you in your trade and profession. I gave that to Lambert, and he basically said, go somewhere else. This was the final straw. And this is why I wrote It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. It was in me, but it was the trigger. Because if the one judge that I had faith in sold out, then what's left? And I've been there for 43 years. Now, Jefferson said that federal judges would become despots because they're unelected, unaccountable to the people, that someday we would have to shed the blood of patriots again, wage another revolution because of the federal judges. He was against them in the Constitution. He didn't want them in Article 3. So this is what I'm trying to say to the American people, is that you've got the deep state that has tried to destroy Trump, is more powerful than Trump and the rest of the American people. You've got the court jesters on Capitol Hill stuffing money into their pockets who accomplish nothing and, in fact, work against the American people. And then you've got the judges, federal judges, who are the worst of all, thinking they're there for life, that they have immunity, unaccountable. And this is why you need an America's sheriff. It's why you need America's toughest sheriff, Joe Arpaio and Larry Klayman, because we need to take peaceful and legal action into our own hands. The establishment of both political parties won't do it, and the president has been attacked by them, and he's in fact been had his hands tied behind his back as well. So we're going to do it on behalf of the American people.
But Larry, maybe you have a reason for not mentioning it, but I sure did in my book. That same judge, Zullo, and thanks to you, we met in chambers. Remember that?
Yeah, well, we had a client, and I don't talk about him anymore because but
well, I can talk.
Different reasons. But the fact is that we brought someone who was a whistleblower to Judge Lambert, and he was instrumental in getting that whistleblower immunity, someone who had knowledge of the mass surveillance of the American people, and including Supreme Court justices. And we went to Comey, and Comey buried all of the evidence, took it off the market. Of course, nothing's happening from the government standpoint about those things as well. But we know that this deep state, the way they manipulate and control people is through the mass surveillance on prominent people like Sheriff Arpaio, like me, like judges and justices and American people as a whole. And they will destroy you if you attack them. But we're not afraid of that. And in fact, I got 2 preliminary injunctions against Obama's NSA on 2 occasions, changed the law, but of course they continue to violate these Fourth Amendment rights of search and seizure and privacy. So, yes, this judge has done some good things, but you see, not standing up for Sheriff Joe Arpaio, that was the final straw. And I understand the sheriff's written about this situation in his book with Royce Lamberth. I still consider this judge a friend, but I was so disappointed that he sold out as well. It's part of the whole thing today, is that people are afraid. They don't want any more aggravation. Royce Lamberth is up there in years as well. And, he's a friendly guy, and I got to know him, after I left Judicial Watch and founded Freedom Watch. And his heart, he's a good person. But on the other hand, there is no one on the federal bench right now that has the courage that needs to do what needs to be done. So we need to do it for ourselves.
When we start to see some of this evidence coming out that the very top of the FBI was destroying evidence, and there's ex parte communications with Emmett Sullivan with regard to Mike Flynn, there seems to be an alarming amount of coercion being exercised over the federal judiciary. I'm not trying to make excuses, but, Sheriff, when you and your cold case posse were investigating the birth certificate, Mike Zullo was one of the lead investigators. You guys spent years breaking down this document. Sheriff, today's the first day you and I have ever spoken, but I am a digital media and visual effects expert, and I have been for more than 30 years. The forgery of this document is so obvious to me, and the research that you and your team did pointed out with no equivocation. We can see just right here in this simple presentation, this date stamp from August 8th, 1961, is red ink, as you might get with one of these old school date, stampers, where you just literally press it down onto an ink pad and then embed it on the page. But the 1 is a different color than all the other numbers. It doesn't seem possible that this type of ink pad could even do that. And that's just one of the elements of evidence that indicate that this thing is a forgery. It's been compared to the Joanna Ani birth certificate. Elements of it match. I mean, pixel for pixel match. Not even any kind of doubt there. But yet, nothing has really happened. What do you think is going to happen with regard to the birth certificate evidence? And do you think that your research into this matter, was this touching the third rail, Sheriff?
Well, first of all, we started this in 2011. The Tea Party came to me, about 200 signed a petition. You're our sheriff. We want you to investigate the birth certificate. Now, I'm not stupid. I've been with the feds for 28 years as a top guy. But then I also said I'm the sheriff. So it took me a few hours to decide to do it. I knew I would take all this heat, but someone had to do it. And I got Mike, who's a member of my posse, so they could not get me for using taxpayers' money, although I could have done it. It's a law enforcement investigation. So I started this. I took heat from the Republican Party, from, don't touch it, don't touch it. And I'm not going to get into my private meetings with the president. I never do that. So when I had my first press conference, all I said was, I could care less where this guy is born. I don't care. I'm looking at a fake document. And by the way, I think I looked at 200,000 fake documents. When these illegals get a job, they have phony documents. Now, they weren't the president, but Obama and Holder sure went after me for that reason, for the birth certificate, not for illegal immigration. I still say today, when they went after me big time, George Soros with his $3 million and everybody, always the illegal immigration. No, they knew I had the evidence, but I can never figure out why no one, no law enforcement agency, and I'm one, would come to me and say, let me look at your evidence. Okay? No one. The media, no one would touch it. Even Fox blackballed me last year. I've been on their show for 24 years because I mentioned the birth certificate. So one day, Larry, I want to know how the United States of America, the media, could cover up this fake document and afraid to even talk about it. That's what I want to know before I go upstairs. It's the biggest hoax in the United States history. And yet, it's still there. Nobody wants to talk about it, but I'm talking about it. I will continue to talk about it until someone has the guts to look into it, come to my office to see all my files. Statute of limitations, okay, I don't care about that. I just wanted Congress to look at it.
I will do it.
Yeah, Jason's very, very smart. He actually broadcast and recorded a citizens grand jury we did where we indicted Mueller last year before COVID hit. And technologically, he's very, very good. But there are things on that birth certificate, notwithstanding the expert forensic analysis that the sheriff and Mike Zullo had retained to do that, that are just obvious. For instance, the reference to the fact that Obama was African American, the word was not used in 1961. It was either black or Negro. No other birth certificate in Hawaii contains that language in and around that time period. That phrase was coined by Jesse Jackson in the 1970s. So there's absolutely no way that this thing is accurate. And, the only one that ever did anything, I filed lawsuits in Florida, my home state, because the Florida election laws are very, very strong. And judges threw the cases out without even an explanation, without even writing why they threw them out, just dismissed. And the Florida Supreme Court wouldn't take it up either. Of course, that's very leftist, the Florida Supreme Court. But the only judge who actually did anything was Chief Justice Roy Moore, also my client, of the Alabama Supreme Court, who ruled that Alabama election rules required an original birth certificate to register to be a political candidate, not just president, but any political candidate. And you know what happened to Judge Roy Moore? They threw him off the Alabama Supreme Court as a result of that and some other things, where he stood up for a legal interpretation of the Constitution over gay marriage. He's not a homophobe at all, but there's nothing in the Constitution that provides a right of gay marriage. And Justices Alito and Thomas have just said that this week. This was a total fiction. So you need people like that. And he doesn't get on Fox News either. Hannity ran away from him as he ran away from Sheriff Arpaio, me as well. You can't say anything on Fox News that touches a nerve and get on there. You have to parrot the same stuff that everybody else says over and over again. And who do they have on? People that don't do anything. They're just pundits for the most part.
I think it was an illusion, Larry, for a while. People like Barry Diller and Rupert Murdoch put together Fox News and were able to successfully fool conservatives for a number of years. But in my view, Larry, any of these corporate-owned, corporate-sponsored news outlets, they have an agenda that does not align with the people of the United States other than selling them stuff. So, that's why I think it's important that independent news outlets like mine grow. And I think it's also important that people support the type of effort that you and the sheriff are doing with americassheriff.org. This is how we, the people, look, I know, Sheriff Joe, you've been in law enforcement for decades. I'm not really effective at going out and fighting a revolution with guns and stuff. My revolution is a media revolution and an information revolution, and I want to work with both of you to help people learn more about this effort and certainly about the birth certificate, because I agree with what you're both saying. It's alarming how just mentioning it invokes criticism of racism. I don't know how you can be racist against a PDF document. All we're saying is a digital document has been forged. How could we go about having why not do a citizens grand jury about the document? And how could we present it to someone to do something about it? You've been trying for years, Sheriff.
Well, yes, Larry, I'm not an expert at that type of legal situation on grand citizens, but Larry is an expert on it, and he knows how to handle it. But all I want is Congress to look at it and maybe change the criteria when people run for president, and at least check something out. Don't leave it to the media. There's no checks and balances. That's all I wanted on this. But I can't get any traction even to this day. And I'm not going to get into the selected service card. That's in my book. You have to be president, you have to be eligible for the draft. And why was it that 18 people, post office, signed up for the selective service? 1980. Why was 18 of them 1980 stamp? Why was Obama 80? There was no 19 on it. So nobody talked about that. That's in my book. So all I want is a little justice, not for me, because I'm going to tell you something. I'm a law enforcement guy, and I should never say this. Never. Because I lock up everybody. But I almost feel in my heart that if you had a fake government document, Hawaii or anywhere, I'm almost ready to say you ought to get a pass. Because why are they going after you and not going after The other situation, this happens to be the president, why are they giving him a pass? So should everybody get a pass under the same circumstances? No, we know that, but we know why. Because he's the president, or was the president. That's sad. That's what burns me up. This guy gets a pass because he's the president, and other people have to go to jail, especially those that don't have much money. They can't afford a lawyer, so they're shoved in jail. And this guy gets a pass because his name is Obama. I will never forget that. I have nothing against Obama. In fact, I had a picture with him in 2009, and also right after that with Biden. That's when they started the investigation. That's when I talked about the swine flu. That's when I went into tents and talked to 10 illegal immigrants to find out where they were from in Mexico. That's where it started. And found out that south of Mexico City, 300 died of that flu. 60 million had that flu. 60 million. Even McCain said way back, well, if we can prove the disease came into the United States, we ought to close the border. 1969. That's when, the same year, when they said, when they went after me, we don't have evidence against Arpaio, but we're going after him again. Not again. They started that. That's the same year the wiretap. They wiretapped me, according to good sources. Same year. And that's the time I said we have to do something about the swine flu. And now look what's happening with the president, all the heat he's taken on, unfortunately, what's going on. But this is all politics. Sometimes I get angry at it, but, it's okay. It's the name of the game. I'm happy to take the heat. I'm always happy. I talk to everybody, every media, love-hate relationship. They want to call, spell my name right. I've been on 4,000 overseas. In fact, I got, who's coming next week is Brussels. Told them to bring some diamonds when they interview me. So they come all over. And I talk. Because you know what? You're right. You are a big weapon because you can talk out. That's the power of talk radio, the power of the media if it's used right. Power of the media. They run everything, good or bad. Everybody's afraid of the media, afraid that they're going to bad words or they're going to lose votes. And I'm going to tell you this. It's a little scoop. And I because you brought up the corporations, so I have a right to respond to when you talked about the corporations.
Yep.
Are sports teams corporations? Of course they are. Aren't they business corporations? Why is it? Just my recent loss, which I never should have lost, a primary. I never lost a primary. But why is it all the owners of all the teams in Arizona gave $12,000 to the Democrat who beat me 4 years ago, running again, who's a Democrat, and Soros gave $3 million, and they knew I was running. Why is it they all gave money to that guy? All the owners gave money. And the New York Times interviewed me, Larry. I wasn't worried about the lawsuit. That's done. And you always say don't talk to them, but you know me, Larry. I talk to everybody. So when they interviewed me, the reporter checked the records, the financial records of my was going to be the opponent. Oh, how come all these owners, all these big shots that own all these teams gave money to your opponent? And he kind of slipped. He kind of said, wait a minute. I'm hot. They don't want me. They don't want me back in there because I'll destroy the reputation of Maricopa or the whole state. Okay, I've been sheriff for 24 years. Okay, you know what my response was? I said, hey, if they're worried about the reputation of the state, why don't they win some championships instead of worried about selling beer and popcorn. That was my answer. If they're worried about their reputation, that shows you. It shows you the establishment and the swamp that we have right here in the desert in Arizona.
Well,
That's what makes me angry.
it's not
Quick
just Arizona.
question. Sorry, Larry. Give us some
Everybody-
insight, Sheriff, into how much money is normally spent on a campaign for sheriff in Maricopa County. $3 million sounds like a large number to me.
No, $3 million they gave to my opponent, Soros. I raised 10 to 12 million the last two elections. What sheriff raises $12 million? Which shows you somebody likes me around the United States. They wouldn't be giving money for me. Of course, the sports figures, they weren't going to give me money. They gave it to the Democrat. I'm telling you, I shouldn't be saying this, but I lost all faith in these sports, what's going on anyway. They kneel, they have no respect for our flag and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Once again, using what's going on today, right? So that's what makes me angry, that after all these years, they go after me because I'm going to ruin the reputation of the state.
And aren't they all tax exempt? These sports teams are 501c3s for some reason. Why is that, Larry?
They're not 501c3s, but they're exempt under the antitrust laws. And of course, they collude, they fix prices, they divide markets. If they were an ordinary business, they would be broken up. And
yeah, but hold on, Larry. I forgot to tell you, they gave from their personal funds the $12,000, not from the team. But they're all the owners of the teams. Come on,
right?
Yeah,
let's not play games here.
It's not even personal with regard to the sheriff. The reason is that they're getting down in a crouched position. Is that this Black Lives Matter movement, which is not the way it's been portrayed, but it's a radical group, separatist group that takes on Black Muslim ideology, that wants to not be part of society, that wants to overthrow our government and overthrow the American people. They're afraid of them because a lot of the players and other people are sympathetic of that group or part of that group. So they throw people like the sheriff under the bus, and they themselves are allowing outrageously. The NBA, in my view, is the worst. They have Black Lives Matter painted on the floors of the basketball courts. They let them write whatever they want on their jerseys. Even my former, once proud alma mater, Duke University, is now having them write equality on the back of the players. I mean, we're for equality, but you know what the inequality is? Is that players go to Duke University for 1 year and don't even have to graduate. They just go there like professional athletes and leave. And they're not even students. There's inequality at Duke University right now. So this is the point. There's so much hypocrisy out there. Let's talk about what it is to be a president. You have to be a natural-born citizen. It's defined as being born to two American parents in the United States or one of its territories. People that opposed Obama on that basis, because he was not a natural-born citizen, also opposed John McCain. He was not a natural-born citizen to run for president. Neither was Mitt Romney. But no one makes reference of that. Instead, Sheriff Joe Arpaio and yours truly and people like that who actually tell the truth, we're the racists. Well, we're not the racists. They're the racists. And that's the reality. And these sports teams' owners, they have become racists against themselves. That's how bad it is. And, it's a disgrace. But that's why AmericasSheriff.org is so important. That's why I want you to read the sheriff's book, read my book, because education is important too. But yes, we're going to be proactive. We're bringing lawsuits, citizens' grand juries, everything we can as citizens of this country to restore the vision of our founding fathers, which has been trashed. And who's trashing it? Every aspect of the establishment is trashing it. And the president's swimming upstream. They're trying to destroy him. They've come dangerously close to doing it. Let's pray that he does win the next election. But whether he wins or not, we, the American people, must do it for ourselves, because he would be in office for only 4 years. And as everything goes forward, there's a downward slide, a degradation. A cancer is growing in our society. And AmericasSheriff.org and FreedomWatchUSA.org we're here to take action on behalf of the American people. So we hope that you will join us.
Now, I know both of you are very busy and we're getting close to the end of our hour, but I do want to touch on just one more subject, Sheriff Arpaio, because I think you're touching the third rail all over the place. And I didn't know anything about this, swine flu topic that you brought up, but something that most people do not know, and this is not conspiracy theory, this is not racism. The CDC itself published this article in 2005 describing how they reconstructed the 1918 influenza pandemic virus by digging up U.S. Army soldiers from World War I who had been buried in a mass grave. I think it was in Alaska. So these guys were preserved in permafrost, and they extracted samples from their lung tissue and recreated the most deadly virus ever known to man in 2005. And then in 2009, we had this viral flu outbreak. You were describing some of the numbers. A lot of people suspect that this activity of reconstructing the 1918 influenza could have some relation to some of the things that we're seeing right now that don't seem to make sense. I'm trying to speak very carefully because Larry has just helped me to restore this YouTube channel, and we're now living in a 1984-esque version of 2020 where simply saying things can get me shut down and trample my business. Had you heard about this reconstruction of the 1918 flu, Sheriff?
No.
What do you think of that?
I heard about, no, I go back to the swine flu because of the situation, and I went public. I have a good memory. I remember Cavuto. I said that, and then all at once, everything, boy, they're after me. Don't forget, that was just after Obama and Holder took office when all this happened, 2009. And once again, I'm going to say we have good information. They tapped my lines. So they were after me. Now, why were they after me? Well, illegal immigration, but I must have triggered something when I start talking about the swine flu.
Yes.
And so on. So just doing my job. And Larry knows I'm a pretty honest guy. Maybe I'm too honest. But I have, on that book, I can back up every word. I kept all my reports from the day I was born. All over the world, I kept reports. Think of that. I have documentation. I don't worry about lawsuits because everything is documented through court records on that book. That is a honest book. Honest book. I'm not trying to sell the book now. And by the way, the book is the main reason I did that. That's my third book. Is I have to get the word out. I can't get the word out through the media. I'm hoping that somebody will get that book and read it. That's all. That's my only hope I have left is through the media, unless Larry and I can shake up the system somewhat as time goes on. So, no, the swine flu, very interesting story. And by the way, I put a press release out 4 months ago, page and a half, to the world. Nobody would even pick it up and call me. Nobody. And I even threw in there, that's the time they started the investigation on me, when I talked about the swine flu. Nobody.
Well, and
think about that.
Years later, Obama let people in who had Ebola. By the grace of God,
Right.
That was not
Right.
a tragedy. I brought a lawsuit against Obama for that, for which I was vilified as a racist. Again, okay? Anytime you attacked Obama legally, you were a racist. And, I'm not afraid of that, and neither is the sheriff, is that we're not racists, that we believe in rights for all people. I've never heard a racist word out of the sheriff's mouth, and nor has he heard one from me. But you have to treat everybody equally, no matter what their sex, religion, sexual persuasion, or whatever, and that's what we do. And the policemen are there to protect us, and we need to remind ourselves of that, because no one is above the law. No one should be above the law. Unfortunately, today there are a lot of people above the law. Most of them live in Washington, D.C., and are part of the establishments of both political parties. They're above the law. No one's been held accountable for anything, not in my lifetime, few lower level people. That's it. But we'll take
Yeah.
action at americascheriff.org. You can be sure of that. And I hope that you'll support us.
Yeah. And I know, Larry, a lot of people who watch Crowdsource the Truth are really fed up with the lack of action. So we're thankful to have you and Sheriff Joe, organizations like americascheriff.org. People can go there and donate. It's a 501c3. And Sheriff Joe Arpaio and Larry Klayman are going to be fighting for our law enforcement officers, which, frankly, I would really prefer to see law and order restored rather than the city I was born in and still live in continue to deteriorate into the garbage pile it's become under Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo. People can also support Larry and his team at freedomwatchusa.org. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and you can click on the donate button. You can also subscribe to the Freedom Watch YouTube channel. People have been watching a simulcast of today's video on there. If you're not yet subscribed, head over to Freedom Watch, click on subscribe, and you can hear Larry's podcasts, his radio shows, the interviews he does here on Crowdsource the Truth. And I really want to thank you, Larry, for introducing me to Sheriff Joe. I've tried several times to interview you, Sheriff Joe. I've been in Arizona and everything. I know you're very busy, but I certainly want to help you publicize this press release. And Sheriff, I've independently looked into the things that you and your team have investigated, and I agree with the conclusions that you've come to. I'd like to offer you an opportunity to come back to Crowdsource the Truth anytime you want. We can continue talking about this stuff and help get the word out. I also want to help people know that they can purchase your book, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, An American Legend. It's available right now on Amazon as a Kindle book, and people can get it wherever books are sold. Gentlemen, anything else you'd like to say before we wrap it up this morning?
Sheriff, you wrap it up. You're my hero.
Well, he's a hero. I only have one hero. It took me 80 years to find it, and that's Donald Trump. One hero. It took me 80 years. But they called me a racist. One thing I did not put in the book, but, you know, at my age, maybe if it's a story on me, I ought to talk about the 4 grandkids I have. One is black, one is Mexican, the other 2 are white. So they want to call me a racist. I could care less. It doesn't bother me at all. I know what I am in my own heart. So let them, when they can't get you on one thing, they throw the race card. Okay, that's all right. But I want to thank you for your show, for what you're doing. Very powerful what you're doing. So thank you again for that. And Larry, thank you for all your help.
My pleasure. And we're going to really change the way things are. We're going to do it because the American people will support us. I know that God is behind us as well.
Well said, absolutely. And I want to thank the both of you for coming on the show this morning and for everything that you've done. We really need individuals like Sheriff Joe Arpaio and Larry Klayman, but there's nobody else in the world like either of you guys. So thank you for joining us this morning. And I want to thank all the viewers that make this show possible. Like we were discussing, corporate news entities that are sponsored by huge corporations that have people like some of the people we've been talking about sitting on their boards of directors. They're never going to bring you this kind of information. So Crowdsource the Truth can't continue without your support and sponsorship. Please go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and become a sponsor. Sheriff Joe, Larry, thanks so much, guys. Have a great day. I'll see you both soon, and thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you, Jason.